Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's Security Boulevard webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great webinar on tap, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on demand. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time you have a question for our speaker, please don't wait, don't hesitate. Just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can near the end of today's webinar. Also, at the end of today's webinar, we will be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is XDR, Extended Detection and Response, the next generation of protection. Our speaker today is George Tubin, who is a Director of Product Management at Cynet. George, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for the introduction. And hi, everybody.
All right. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the presentation. As you heard, today we're going to be talking about XDR, and many of you have likely heard of XDR. Many of you know a little bit about XDR. Some of you know nothing about XDR, and sort of everything in between. Today we're going to change that. We're going to level set with everybody on XDR, what it is, at least from my perspective, as you go out and listen to the analyst community and other vendors in the space. As always, you'll hear different perspectives, and this is an evolving and emerging technology. So, you'll have to do a lot more digging and to really figure out how everybody's approaching this. But today what I want to do to level set and kind of help bring this conversation along is first spending a few minutes level setting on the key problems that we're facing today with breach protection, what we're trying to solve. Why do we need XDR? Why is it coming about? We're not doing it just as a fun exercise. We're doing it for a reason. And what is that reason? And then I want to frame XDR with maybe some high-level visuals to show, kind of a marketecture, I suppose you call it, of XDR. And then throughout this presentation, I'll compare XDR with EDR. I think a lot of people on the call are familiar with EDR. Most large companies have some type of EDR solution. A lot of mid and smaller size companies have an EDR solution as well. So in any discussion of XDR, it really helps to start with EDR and frame it that way. EDR was introduced maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, back in 2012, 13, I think. And there are a couple of dozen very large EDR vendor providers out there, maybe several hundred smaller EDR providers. So it's a technology that more people are familiar with. So I think it's a good way to root our discussion of XDR. And then hopefully I'll have some time at the end, and I'll shift over to a live demo to illustrate how XDR works and really highlight some of the differences of what you get from an XDR platform versus an EDR platform. So with that, let's go into our first topic and talk about really why we need something better. And I'm starting with these numbers: mean time to identify, mean time to contain a breach. And after all the time and money we've spent on cybersecurity, these two metrics show that we're still very vulnerable. And these numbers are extremely high. And it's been right around this level for the last 4, 5, 6 years. And I mean, to me, this is just unacceptable. Given the amount of money that you're likely spending on cybersecurity tools, the amount of investments you're making in training, and doing everything you can to prevent breaches. And while we're 99.99% effective at preventing breaches. When they happen, this is what happens. An actor gets into our environment and they stay there. They move around laterally, and at some point, some poor CISO has to go to the CEO and say, "Hey, a criminal's been in our network for the past, year or 200 days." And now worse, we have to bring some experts in to help us figure out the extent of this breach, and help remediate the breach. And that's going to take another 2 to 3 months, to completely get rid of this threat. Um, and it's just a very bad situation to be in. And we all know as well the number of breaches is increasing every year. We know that ransomware attacks, successful ransomware attacks, are on the rise. Um, and I think last year Poneman, um, in one of their studies, showed that half of all security leaders don't even know if their cybersecurity tools were working for them, and half said they've seen a security control say that it blocked some type of attack when it actually failed to do so. So this is something we really need to fix. And I know there's not one single answer, but hopefully as we move into XDR and try to do things a little bit differently and better, we'll begin to attack this problem and make a dent in it. So the simple fact is we just need a better way to detect and respond to threats. Um, and we have a lot of security technologies that have been developed, and a lot of point solutions. So we have a lot of tools. We have a lot of highly skilled analysts. We do a lot of training. We spend a lot of time on integration. How do we take all the signals from the separate tools and make sense of it? So we're not running around to different panes of glass and trying to find the needles in the haystack. And this leads to another problem, is that cybersecurity is sort of become unwieldy and very complex, and too many tools that have to be managed and panes of glass to move to. And for a smaller company, um, some just don't have the budget and people to support all the tools needed. Some small companies don't even know all the tools that they should have in place. And larger companies that can go out and get all the appropriate tools have a really tough time and spend a tremendous amount of time trying to integrate it and rationalize the tools. So I think we're at a point, after we've had this this long period of expanding into different types of tools that we could use. I think it's time to start rationalizing our tool set, really figuring out what are the right tools, what's the right set of tools that we need, and kind of sit back and kind of rethink where we are with those. And then the other thing that goes along with that is complexity. Um, if you look at a Microsoft reference architecture, it's just crazy. If you're a big company trying to integrate and maintain all these different tools and technologies, that becomes a large portion of your cybersecurity budget. It's just keeping all this together. And for cybersecurity to be effective, there really needs to be very tight integration and coordination between the tools you use. And if you're a small company, you just have a bunch of silos, different security tools with analysts jumping from screen to screen, doing the best they can. And the real question comes down to, how do I best manage and coordinate the right set of tools to maximize the effectiveness and to best help my team succeed? So I think this idea of kind of consolidating um, as much as we can onto single platforms, rather than having all these different specialized point products is something that we really need to start thinking of. And then kind of finally, when we think about where we are and what's kind of driving the need for change here, is that we all know that it's really good cybersecurity talent is really difficult to find. And when we do find it, it's become very expensive. If we look at this map, we look at the deficit in talent that we have throughout the world. Um, Larger companies just can't find and train good security personnel fast enough. Smaller security companies just can't afford to have top-level cybersecurity talent. So I think one of the things we need to do is rely less on humans and more on automation. And this doesn't mean automating the very complex types of security activities that happen, but there's a lot of very menial, remote, repetitive kind of things that happen that we certainly can um, look at automating. And again, I'm not talking about advanced AI and machine learning as replacements for complex thought processes, but it's really rationalizing things that can be automated and moving forward with that. Um, if you're a big company, it's automating those basic tasks so that your analysts have more time for the really important, complicated matters. If you're a small company, it's automating tasks that maybe your analysts don't know how to do, and kind of help guiding them through what should be done, reacting to a certain event or an incident. So, those are some of the things that I think, as cybersecurity professionals is something we need to look at and something we have to start moving towards going forward. So with that, let me shift into framing XDR and how XDR will help address some of those issues. And I think that the easiest way to frame XDR is really to start with EDR and talk about how do we get to where we are right now. And I think most folks on the phone know that 20 years ago, if your company had a good antivirus solution, you're pretty much all set. I have good antivirus, the signatures are updated, and I'm good. And it didn't take long, as threats advance, and we're able to get by signatures that suddenly we developed next generation AV to add in, behavior-based techniques and cloud-based analysis, so we could identify antivirus with a different way than signatures, and that led into EPP, endpoint protection platforms, which combine antivirus, next generation antivirus, and then added in whitelisting, blacklisting. Some had encryption capabilities and endpoint control capabilities, and that sort of evolved into next generation endpoint protection, which maybe introduced some machine learning and AI capabilities, into the platform. And then finally, we came up with EDR, and I think the real impetus behind EDR was finally realizing that we can't prevent everything. We're not going to prevent all the threats all the time. So we'll continue to prevent and do as much as we can to prevent threats, but we have to move beyond prevention to detection and be able to, as fast as we can, detect those threats that have bypassed our prevention controls. And then, as importantly, add in response capabilities and be able to, as quickly as possible, remediate those threats that we've identified. So with EDR is a good start and getting a lot of things right. We've realized that if we really want to be effective at protecting our organizations, we need broader visibility beyond the endpoint. Which really means that organizations have to invest in additional controls. You're looking at the network, maybe cloud, maybe users, um, and then manage those separate controls, integrate all those controls together. And if we could just kind of have a platform that provided us with that visibility, so we didn't have to go out and do all that, things would be something like EDR that could extend a little bit further. I think would be great. The second thing we realized is we need a better way to respond to threats, as our security analysts are just becoming overwhelmed with the amount of alerts that are being thrown at them between the EDR solution and the other controls that are in place. There's just no way to be able to address every alert appropriately. So again, folks realize that if we could expand and improve on the capabilities of EDR, which we started off and got a lot of things right, it will really help us fix a lot of the problems that we're facing. And that's fundamentally what XDR does. And now XDR seems to be the shiny new thing. It's something that the analyst community is talking about. The vendor community is certainly increasing capabilities and seems to be aligning behind it. So let's kind of frame what XDR is. So let's take a second and look at this. So if I was going to create a simplified view of a breach protection architecture or marketecture, um, I drew this kind of visual. And this is really oversimplified, just looking at kind of, threat detection and response capabilities in an organization. And, so if you look at this, you have a number of controls, and maybe you have EDR, maybe you have network traffic analysis or network detection and response, NDR. Um, Maybe you have some type of cloud protection, a CASB type of solution. Maybe you have some type of email type of solution. Maybe you have a user behavioral analysis solution. And what an organization will do is then go out and invest in a SIM. And a SIM will, integrate signals from all of these different controls, normalize the signals, correlate the signals, and prioritize what analysts should look at. And that's all great, and it could be extremely useful, but it's certainly a lot of work to put that together and make that all kind of function seamlessly, so that all the different signals and information from all the different controls from different vendors are all coming together as they should. And then, you may want to invest in a SOAR technology um, to now be able to respond to those alerts and those threats that you're seeing. And that may include some type of automated investigation capability and being able to remediate the threats that you see across the organization. And maybe you can define workflows and predefined playbooks to use in certain situations, so that now you can automate the investigation and response to a threat. And the SOAR may connect to different components throughout the organization, maybe to different firewalls or proxies or active directories, so that you can get the information that you need for investigation, and then you can also reach out to those components, um, to be able to respond appropriately to the identified threats. Now, this all looks great, and it's great if you're a large corporation and you have a ton of money to spend on all these different controls um, and technologies and all the integration that's needed up front, as well as ongoing integration to make changes um, every time a vendor does an update that's connected into this, or every time you want to make a change to policy. It's a lot of work, but it could be effective, but it's a lot of work. So when we shift now and think about in this context, what is XDR? XDR kind of carves out a piece of this stack and puts it into a single unified platform. So it's taking a lot of the things that we just talked about, a lot of the capabilities that are there, but rather than having this spread across 5, 6, 7, 10 different solutions, it kind of brings all of this stuff into a single unified platform. So, we integrate controls. So rather than buying and integrating and managing separate prevention and detection controls, um, they're built into the XDR platform. And this allows the platform to have a SIM-like capability, and that the signals and information from all the controls are brought into a single platform. And they're already integrated, they're already normalized, already correlated, um, because they're all native to the platform, so that you get that out of the box. And by doing something like this, XDR can start to group similar alerts together into incidents, and it could see things um, that otherwise would require a much more complex um, um, capability. And so now, rather than chasing individual alerts and going to different panes of glass to figure out how an attack might be unfolding, all that is contained now within the XDR platform, and the XDR platform will have visibility into this. And from the response automation side, again, because all the signals and information needed are present, XDR can automate many of the functions, like investigating incidents. Maybe look at what actions preceded an alert. What's the full scope of this threat across the enterprise? And then automate remediation actions across the environment, whether it's deleting malicious files, maybe disconnecting endpoints from the network, disabling a user. Um, and it can also offer highly customized remediation playbooks, like a SOAR tool can, to look at how we respond to threats. So now, XDR won't provide the full capabilities of a SIM or SOAR tool that can go out and integrate multiple components across the environment, um, and pull it into that single platform. But it can, out of the box, provide very similar capabilities for the controls that are offered within the XDR platform. So it's kind of a slice of what a full-blown threat detection architecture would look like, brought into a single platform and maybe consolidated a little bit. So let's look at a little bit more closely at how XDR improves upon EDR. Shifting to our third agenda topic here. If you look at my friend John Venn, he would note that XDR pretty much does everything, or should do everything an EDR does, plus a lot more. And I showed a little bit of outside overlap here, because some XDR providers may not provide everything that every EDR provider provides, but it pretty much should encompass everything that EDR does, plus offer a lot more. So if we hone in on kind of the three, there are a lot of differences, but I'll just focus on three kind of key differences between the two solutions. So first, EDR solutions, as you would expect, protect endpoints. Most EDR tools now incorporate next generation antivirus, but it's focused on endpoint protection. And an enterprise has to go out and purchase additional security tools to protect other parts of the environment, and really be able to fully, to get full visibility into a threat in the environment. And realizing that only looking at the endpoint is quite limited, XDR platforms, and here I'm going to share what's included on the Cynet XDR platform, just because I obviously know this platform, and I can't really speak for the other vendors, but you can go out and see what others are offering. But the Cynet platform, for example, monitors and leverages the combined signals from endpoint, from network, from user, and then actually adds in deception technology and puts this all within a single platform. So now, rather than going out and purchasing separate controls or additional controls beyond EDR, and then use a tool like a SIM to coordinate the signals, XDR provides all of these capabilities out of the box. And as you can imagine, there are multiple benefits to doing this. You could better determine the severity of each alert by connecting it to related alerts across the environment. And this should improve detection accuracy, and hopefully reduce the volume of false positive alerts that one faces, because you just have much better um, visibility into the entire environment. Maybe there's a benign alert that comes in that you're not looking at, but when you can see that it's part of a of a larger attack, by combining extra information, it ensures that weaker and maybe important signals aren't ignored. And then the other thing is, if you natively combine all these controls, it means the integration of all these controls work from the start, and they always will. Um, you don't have to worry about integrating these components, normalizing the signals, and dealing with how to combine and assess and prioritize the signals when the vendor wants to do an update. Um, there's not a lot of work to integration work to happen on the background, and different testing that needs to happen. Um, you don't need to coordinate perhaps with as many vendors, um, and of course the cost of doing this will be much lower than going out and getting all of these tools separately. So, essentially, this provides kind of a layered defense out of the box, um, where you could protect the endpoint, you could detect lateral movement on the network, detect if a user account maybe has been compromised, and then layer in deception technology. Um, and as part of a layered security stack, deception technology could be that last line of defense to uncover attacks that maybe have successfully bypassed other controls by putting decoys out there. So somebody that's a malicious actor that's on the network can stumble across a fake uh, host or a fake user or a decoy file, and kind of expose themselves with that. And the problem till now is that only very large enterprises have really been able to leverage deception technology because of the cost and complexity. And now, the deception and all these tools could be part, again, of a single XDR platform. The second kind of main difference with XDR is providing extended and automated remediation to fully remediate threats. Now, being able to respond and detect threats is really a key benefit of EDR solutions. And if you look at the type of response EDRs provide, they're somewhat limited, of course, to the endpoint. And again, it's a great capability, and it's very important. We have to be able to detect and immediately address threats that we find. But XDR greatly improves upon this. And again, with the extended controls you saw, and again, I'll have to share what Cynet does, and look at what the other vendors do to see how things are different. XDR does everything EDR does, but then adds additional capabilities beyond the endpoint to the network, to the user, and even other parts of the environment. And with this expanded reach, XDR solutions can do something else, and that's leverage remediation playbooks to string multiple remediation actions together in response to a specific threat. So these playbooks include remediation actions that go beyond the endpoint, but are absolutely necessary um, to help remediate a threat. And these playbooks could be triggered manually. They could be triggered automatically, depending upon what the threat is, whatever the organization prefers. And this is an example, of a ransomware playbook. When the ransomware is detected, it's something that you need to react to incredibly quickly. And every organization may decide to take different actions, um, but put them in play immediately when ransomware is detected, so that you kind of ensure that the ransomware actor can't get a foothold into the organization. And again, this could all be brought together on a single platform. Now, finally, with an EDR solution, when an alert's generated, as we saw on the previous slide, it's oftentimes remediated. But the one thing that security folks know is that every time an alert's generated, whether it's automatically remediated or not, it really should be investigated. Especially if it's a high risk alert. And if it's not investigated, you won't know if the threat starts and stops with that single alert, or if that alert or that threat is just part of a larger attack campaign. Or maybe the threat was able to make its way onto other endpoints, or maybe it was able to execute something malicious before it was detected and remediated. But in reality, most security teams just have limited bandwidth, just aren't able to investigate every alert that occurs in the organization. A lot of smaller security teams just lack the expertise to fully investigate and remediate the full scope of an attack. So now with an XDR platform, rather than manually investigating every alert, XDR can start to provide automated investigation and response capabilities. Um, so, again, I apologize for using Cynet all the time, but I have to because I have access to it. So, an example here from Cynet is an incident engine that actually launches an automated investigation following high-risk alerts. And I think I'll have time to do a demo. I'll actually show you what this looks like live in the Cynet platform. So when the incident engine is invoked after a high-risk alert, it first traces back to understand how the detected threat was generated in the first place and uncovers the root cause of the attack. Then it will search across the network to see if the same threat components of the attack exist anywhere else in the environment, and it helps you uncover the full impact of the attack. And then finally, it can automatically remediate the components of the attack in the environment using built-in remediation capabilities or custom remediation playbooks. So the idea to remember is that the alert is really just the starting point. And even if it's been remediated, we do need to do investigation, and we all know how much time and energy that takes. So as much as we can automate um, that process, at least to get us a head start on things, for our security analysts to help make their lives easier. By pulling these signals together into a single platform, we could begin to do that. Um, and maybe start from second base, rather than having to get there all the way from home. So, again, if I'm going to look at a high-level architecture, kind of diagram to show everything that's involved in kind of XDR platform. And again, I'll have to show Cynet. There are the detection and prevention controls we have, shown in blue. There's a response automation component, and interesting. When people talk about extended detection and response, they typically think about extended detection and extending detection beyond endpoint to other points of telemetry. But I think, as you've seen here, and we'll see in the demo, it really allows for this extended response capability as well to allow us to do things and with response automation that up till now really haven't been possible unless you went out and got a full-blown SOAR solution and tied in multiple different controls, security controls into that solution. And then, Cynet, like other EDR and XDR vendors, include a 24/7 MDR service as well as part of the platform. So let me see if I could hopefully shift over to the demo quickly without taking a lot of time here, and kind of give you an idea of what I have a couple of different windows open here. What an XDR platform might look like. So I'm going to keep the demo fairly high level so I could show you a bunch of the capabilities I covered in the presentation. I'm not going to really dig deep into each of the capabilities. But the first thing you'll see here is that the dashboard, which is kind of always has to graphically look nice. You can see that you have full visibility into the environment. You can see alerts for files, for users, for hosts in a network, all in this single pane of glass. And it really highlights the visibility you get with an XDR solution versus an EDR solution. Like all of this is brought into a single platform. So let's take a quick view of the environment being protected. And if I look over here, we could see, kind of multiple scan groups across the environment. And if I can zoom in here a little bit, I'll look at, this node. And, you'll see here you have multiple colors. The green one, on this node indicates a real host that contain real files, such as this server 2016. The orange ones refer to deception hosts, and those are the fake decoy hosts that don't actually exist in the environment. So in this case, if a malicious attacker gets into the environment and scans the network, they'd kind of see this picture. I mean, they wouldn't see it orange and green, but in this group of 10 hosts, there's a 90% chance they're going to choose a decoy host. I'm trying to access the domain controller. Um, and we can adjust decoy host along with decoy users for when a malicious actor tries to move laterally across the environment, using maybe a different domain user. We could add multiple decoy files as well, but it gives a quick view of how deception may work in the environment. Now, if we go back to an alert view, we could see on our single pane of glass, we see multiple different types of alerts as the platform monitors files, users, hosts, and network activity, as well as deception activity. And this kind of shows the expanded visibility that an XDR platform can provide. Um, the first few alerts here, are detected with next generation AV or EDR capabilities, seeing this ransomware type of alert. Um, DNS tunneling is something that we pick up with our network visibility, being able to see that. Various file alerts. Here's a decoy alert where somebody tried to access a decoy file, and then a user alert where we see um, abnormal user behavior, where a user's logging in at a time where we thought that maybe they shouldn't log in. And again, network responder alert, which is kind of a man in the middle tool that sniffs out network traffic and steals passwords. So we're able to detect that. So we can see that an XDR platform has much more visibility across the environment to provide more protection than an EDR solution might. And now if we look at response automation, um, as we look at our alert, we could see what file was infected, what the host was, the alert occurred on, who the user was that was associated with the host at that time, and we can click over to the remediation tab, and we could decide to perhaps take remediation actions directly from the console. And here's a list of various file types of remediation actions that could happen. There's remediations that could happen with the user, um, things with the host and the network, and maybe for this particular one, a ransomware alert, we want to invoke a playbook, and we could look over and look at the different playbooks that we have and invoke that playbook. So let me go to the playbooks, and I'm going to go over here because I have more privileges on this particular thing. So if I go over here into remediation, go into playbooks, I can build and design my own playbooks that I want to invoke for certain threats that I see. And if I look at this ransomware playbook, we've chosen for ransomware to do certain activities. And when ransomware is detected, kill the process, disable the user, isolate the host, um, and then take additional actions that we could do now across um, the environment. And there's many other operations that could be performed out of the box, and all these actions can happen serially or sequentially, however we decide to invoke them. So the last thing I want to show is how an XDR solution can actually provide automated investigation and response actions, which again is something that's far beyond the capability of EDR and starts to move into something that maybe a SOAR solution could do. So if I go over to my alert view and I look through the various alerts that I have, I may look at this alert down here for a malicious process command. I could look on the screen and I could see the file involved was wmic.exe. I could see the host that this happened on. I could see the user that was here. And what happened here with this alert is we analyzed the behavior of this wmic.exe file and process. And while wmic.exe is actually a legitimate tool, we determined that this instance of wmic.exe is actually malicious. And we know that attackers will corrupt legitimate Windows tools because they're expected to be present in the environment and attempt to execute malicious code. So the process was terminated. And this in and of itself is very valuable, and it's hopefully something that an EDR solution would do. But as we've mentioned before, just terminating this malicious process didn't completely solve the problem, because the only thing we know for sure is that this particular malicious process was terminated. But we don't know if the attack begins and ends with this malicious wmic.exe file, or if it's part of a larger scale operation. We don't know if this file was able to do any damage before it was detected and terminated. We don't know how the file was executed in the first place. We don't know the root cause. We don't know the scope. And until we answer these questions, we can't really know that we're safe. But doing this type of investigation takes time, it takes skills, it takes effort, and many companies just don't have the bandwidth to do it. They're either maybe too busy to spend time to investigate the alerts, or they don't know that they need to do this type of investigation for this type of high risk alert. So let's look at the incident view for a better approach. If I come over to this alert and I click on incident view, it brings me into this screen, which hopefully we can see. Let's see if I can expand that a little bit. Yeah, hopefully that's a little bit better. No, no, maybe not. As I look at this view, I see a workflow that was taken, this automated workflow. Let me go back to the way it was. Now I've messed it up. Okay, I'll go into this automated workflow. And in this workflow, I have investigation steps shown in blue. I have findings, which are shown in red, and I have remediation actions that are shown in green. So if I, at a high level, follow this process through, the first thing I'm going to do is check if this malware was able to execute any malicious file before it was detected and terminated. Unfortunately, my investigation shows no. The process was terminated early enough that no malicious file was executed. That's great. The next thing I do is check how this malicious command was executed in the first place. And here we have a very interesting answer. We discovered that it was actually executed by a scheduled task. Now, a scheduled task is also a legitimate Windows utility, which is very commonly used, and no security product is going to trigger an alert when this is created. So this is our first finding, shown over here. The root cause is a scheduled task, and we immediately take action and terminate that from the host. Now, think about it. If we only relied on the prevention layer, the scheduled task may have continued to execute malicious files, maybe different file types, hoping that maybe one wouldn't be detected. And here we quickly got to the underlying root cause and deleted the scheduled task before this had a chance to happen. So now we go on and we search and we say, hey, we're able to find this scheduled task on any other host. And we find, yeah, we do find the scheduled task on 2 additional hosts, and that's another finding. And we delete these tasks from those hosts. So we're making progress here. And now we're wondering, where did this come from? What's the root of this coming out of the network? And we see that the first host to get infected was this PC4, and we see that this machine actually communicated with the other 2 infection machines, because we're able to analyze network traffic. And here we determine that this host was the root cause, and we isolate that host from the network before any more damage could be done. So the incident engine, first and foremost, saved lot of time and effort that would be required to fully investigate and remediate um, this incident across the organization. And second, it unveiled hidden threats that might have otherwise been overlooked. And then finally, it automatically and quickly removed all the threats before any damage could be done. Now, with no configuration needed, this was automatically launched when that alert was generated. The incident engine, completed this full investigation and remediation while the security analysts continued to work. And we could see that this whole thing took just under 8 minutes to happen. And some security teams may say, okay, this is good enough, and I'm happy with this. But at a minimum, this gives a tremendous head start to the investigation that one might take after a high risk incident. So if we come back here to we show the demo to our presentation. Sorry here. I'll kind of wrap up with this slide, for you guys to think about XDR and whether it's a good fit for your organization. If you're listening and you're in a large enterprise, I think you'll see how, at least conceptually, XDR is able to improve detection and response. It should be able to reduce the size of your tool set. XDR solutions cost about the same as an EDR solution, but has all the extra capabilities that you've just seen. So it becomes much more affordable, and it really can help to automate some of those repetitive tasks, or at least help the security team get a really good head start on the investigation and remediation actions that should be taken. If you're coming in from a small or a medium-sized enterprise, it does provide a lot of the same improved detection and response capability. You may not have some of the controls that are included in the XDR platform. Maybe you do have a network detection and response capability, maybe you don't. You probably don't have a user behavioral analysis capability. You're very unlikely to have something like deception or some of the other controls that would be included in XDR type of solution. So out of the box, you get that expanded visibility. Again, get the expanded response automation capabilities. You get a lot a bang for the buck with an XDR solution versus an EDR solution. And I think it may help you gain some skills, through the automation, where the automated investigation steps, a lot of those really come from Cynet's own MDR team that do a lot of threat hunting and incident response on automating the typical steps that a cybersecurity expert would take. When they're investigating a threat and going through the necessary remediation steps. So this certainly helps add a lot of skill, I think, to your team. So with that, I know I went through a lot of material. There's a lot to cover. And there's probably a lot of questions that are still in your mind, and I think at a minimum, I think that hopefully this gave one perspective on XDR and what an XDR platform could look like, and and use this as you go out and investigate how this solution area is evolving. So with that, let me end my portion of the presentation portion,
Mhm.
and I can perhaps open this up to questions from the audience if there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, great stuff, great information. I love to watch the demos. Guys, we have about, I would say, 6 or 7 minutes for questions. So we've gotten a couple in, but there's time. If you do have a question for George, go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and get it on in. Let's go ahead and dive right on in. First one, does XDR have the capability to perform vulnerability scans?
Well, it depends on what you mean by that, but at some level, yes. if you define the vulnerabilities that you're looking for, I don't know if you're talking about threat hunting or vulnerability, but because of the expanded visibility across the environment, you could certainly go out and scan and verify endpoints, networks, hosts, for vulnerabilities that you're going to be, looking to assess. It's a great tool for threat hunting. Again, given the visibility that one has from the single pane of glass, with a tremendous amount of forensic information in there as well, it definitely gives a great tool, for that capability.
All right. All right, great. Next question. How would you recommend a small business startup to begin? And what scale options are there to support growth?
Okay, so a small business that's looking to protect their organization, I certainly think a tool like XDR becomes the perfect solution. It's kind of, it's the way for a small business to get enterprise level protection out of the box. Now, an enterprise, I mean, to be truthful, will go out and likely go out and purchase what they consider to be best of breed solutions or best of breed controls, um, for endpoint detection, maybe for network detection and response, maybe for user and entity behavior analytics, and maybe go and get a separate deception technology and maybe some other technologies as well, and then pull everything together, like we showed before, into a SIM and use SOAR technology. And given very, very large budgets and very large security staff, that's all well and good. But for most folks that don't, need a Ferrari and a Maserati and a, McLaren and whatever, types of things you're thinking of and brought all together, you're going to get most of what you need using an XDR type of solution. The other thing is, um, there are MSSPs out there that are providing XDR solutions from Cynet, as well as some other providers. So if you wanted to rely on an MSSP, you could go that route. Cynet has a full MDR service that's actually included with the product. So anybody that gets the Cynet platform with no extra cost gets a full MDR behind it that's available 24/7. So it really becomes a perfect solution, I think, for a small startup business, or even small to medium-sized enterprise.
All right, great. Let's see. I think we have time for one or two more questions here. Let's see. Here's one for you. What kind of SIEM, SIEM, alert connector does Cynet provide? Do you have any setup for DNS tunneling alerts?
Uh, so for SIM, we're Cynet specific is beginning to work with some SIM providers, for those types of connections, and I think it's actually pretty straightforward to do that. So I think it's dependent upon the SIM that's being used, and we certainly do have alerts for DNS tunneling, and and various types of network alerts available out there on the system. If I suggest you reach out to Cynet if you have really very specific types of alerts or SIMs that you're wondering about, to get kind of a more detailed response.
All right. And then the second part of that question was, do you have any setup for DNS tunneling alerts?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I thought I said yes.
Oh, okay. All right, great. All right, so we have one more question in, so let's go ahead and answer that, and then we'll close out the question and answer period. Can the agents be deployed to servers as well, or only end user devices?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Agents could be deployed to serve to any host, servers, end user devices. Um, and deployment is very interesting with this type of solution. It's actually much easier than one might think. Um, I think the Cynet could be deployed to we've deployed to 5,000 hosts in an hour. So it doesn't take long to get full deployment out there. And interestingly, within 24 hours of deployment, the full functionality of the platform is live and going. So everything I showed you in the demo, and a lot of other things that I didn't show you in the demo, are actually working and ready to go within the organization. So a lot of time has been spent to make this as easy to use and deploy as possible. And I don't know if I can't say that's the same for all XDR solutions, but it's certainly something that we've spent a lot of time on because we know how important that is.
Okay. All right, great. Well, we are about 5 minutes to the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the question and answer period. If you have a question for George or somebody over at Cynet, you can still go ahead and use the GoToWebinar control panel and get it in. The folks at Cynet are getting a copy of all the questions that were asked, and if we didn't get to your question during the Q&A, I'm sure somebody from the organization will be more than happy to follow up with you offline to get your question answered. Also, a quick reminder to the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the event, or if you just want to watch it again, that's totally cool. We'll like that. You can access the webinar on demand. We will be sending out an email after today's webinar with a link to do that. And the webinar is also going to be living on the Security Boulevard website. So you can always go look for it there. Just go to securityboulevard.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. All right, before we close things out, I did say at the top of the hour we would be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do that now. Our first winner today is Dave B. Congratulations, Dave. Next winner, Jason L. Congratulations, Jason. Third winner today is Steve G. Congratulations, Steve. And our final winner today is Jeremy M. Congratulations, Jeremy. We'll be following up with all 4 of you offline by email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. And so check your inbox. If you don't see anything in your inbox, please check your spam folder. George, what a great presentation. Thank you so much for the information and the demo. I know I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure, judging from the questions that came in, our audience got a lot out of it too. So thanks again. Really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay. Also want to thank the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.